because I want to get into this video and I want to talk about interviews. Sometimes you have the best interview, you feel good, you feel like you're prepared, you feel like what they said about you was like really amazing, that it boosted your ego. Sometimes you have the worst interview, it lets you down. Sometimes you expect too much but you don't get anything back. Sometimes what happens, you have an interview, they don't get back to you, but then also sometimes you realize that what they do say is too honest. The most important thing to learn from interviews is how to improve your confidence, your skills, but then also learning from your mistakes and to not dwell on your mistakes to the point that you don't try again. And I wanted to say it is a repetitive process, because when it comes to interviews, what you have to do, you have to look good, you have to prepare questions, you have to prepare what you're going to say to other people's questions. And you have to realize that when it comes to an interview, some people might even say this, that why are people interviewing people based on what they know versus their skills for the job? Because you have to realize someone that is highly qualified for a job in terms of skills, if they were hired, they could actually make a difference. But sometimes they go for people that look the best. They sometimes go for people that aren't the most skilled, but because they are more confident, that's why they get the job, over someone with the skills, but they're just not as confident. You have to realize that sometimes the best interviews are the ones where you're working the hardest, but sometimes the ones that aren't the best is because you didn't prepare at all. And I'm going to get into my story of my best and worst interviews. From these two examples, I hope that you do relate to it in some way, so that you can learn from your mistakes, to realize that we're all going through the same things, and to realize that without a job, you realize that it's really hard to make a living on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to start off with the worst one, and I'll save the best for last. You know, when I keep applying for jobs, sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes months, but it could never be me where I'm applying for jobs and I don't see anything within a year, because at that point it will really stress me out. I normally take the time to actually go through my job applications. I don't rush to submit it anymore. And what I would have done, I try and take my time to do 2 separate applications. When it comes to jobs being advertised, sometimes it's online, where it's on like an app. Sometimes you do the app from your phone, on your laptop, but it's always better to apply for jobs on a laptop because it's a bigger screen. When you're applying for jobs on a laptop, what you can do, you can create so many documents all at once. You're not going to write over 150 words if they're going to ask you to do 150 words, but instead you're just doing what they ask you to do. Because you wouldn't want it to be that you're making something complicated, but it's just very simple. And don't be like me in the past where you would rush to submit it. Because the thing is, there's some jobs that aren't really meant for you. And if you're just applying for any and every job, you realize it's going to take you a longer time to actually then find a job. When it comes to looking for a job, it can be tedious, it can be repetitive, it can be draining. People around you won't really get it because they're in permanent jobs, but you're not. If you do get a job and you get a permanent job, it's good to work there for at least a few months, like 3 to 6 months, and possibly a year, but over a year as well, like 1 year, 2 years. You wouldn't want it to be that you're applying for a permanent job and you're so obsessed with other people's performance that you forget to focus on yours. And that's why when it comes to you focusing on yourself for really a job, once you do get it, because I do believe you can get a job, you just need to focus on your skills. You need to pay attention to what the job offers in terms of products and services. And you don't want it to be that you're in a job, but then you don't learn anything at all. But let me get back into my story, because when it came to my worst interview, what happened, I seemed to get jobs at a certain time in the year. And for example, for the longest time, I would get jobs round about the summertime when it's near my birthday. I think it's because I'm more optimistic, I'm more positive. I'm not really looking at job applications as much, because during the summer, I want to be outside, I want to have a good time. And I do get it that in order to have a good time, you need to be working as well. So that's why people say that you need to work hard now so that you can play later. So what happens, some companies, they will call you randomly before you get the job, and you don't even know that they're calling you because they call you on some random number. the companies that actually call you to schedule an interview, where they want to have an interview in person, is so much better, because that way you get to dress nicely, you get to show them more of your aura, your personality, and you realize that when it comes to in-person interviews, you need to actually prepare questions, and realize that if you don't smile once, because I used to go to job interviews with a straight face, and I realized that the more videos that I do, and the more that I look at myself, because I wouldn't want it to be that I'm coming across as cold, when deep down I'm not as cold around people. You have to realize that your face plays a huge role in whether you get a job or not. Because if you're not enthusiastic, if you're not well groomed, you don't want it to be that when you're at your job that you're just stressed out, that you don't get sleep, you're not taking care of yourself. And you don't want it to be that you're so drained in a job that when you first join, you're so happy and you're always smiling, but then months later you're just depressed. I'm actually going to bring up SpongeBob right now, because you know how in SpongeBob he's always cooking the burgers, the Krabby Patties, that, you know, other people, they want to find the secret to the Krabby Patties and why he likes doing it so much. But you have to understand, when it comes to really a job, you have to find things that really bring you joy. No matter how boring, no matter how repetitive something is in a job, you want it to be that you find something that you enjoy. You need to find something in a job that you enjoy, where the time goes by, that it doesn't feel like a job, because you're having conversations with people, you're doing something that you consider to be fun. And when people ask you questions, such as customers, you are the only one that knows the answer, because you have expertise in that area. So that's why when it comes to the jobs that you apply for, you need to start doing more things that you enjoy, so it doesn't feel like work. And the things that you have expertise in, you want to do more of that, so that people will appreciate your services more, because you're making a difference towards other people's lives and it's not just about you. And I wanted to say, when you give good customer service, you realize that people are going to talk about it, more people are going to come back, and they're going to look for you in particular. So back to my worst interview story. What happened, I was in the car with my family, I got a random call and I was going to answer it. I don't normally answer just any call, but I was like, I should answer it. I knew it was going to be something about a job, because I did many applications. And sometimes when you apply for a job, companies sometimes take months later to respond. So I do have sympathy for people that aren't in a job right now. You realize that because the motorway is long, you realize that the only thing that people can really do is listen to each other's conversations in the car. So what happened, I decided to answer a phone call. Even though I didn't have to, I answered it. So they were asking me, is my name this? And it's the same thing on my CV. And then I said yes. And then they asked me this question straight away, that you applied for this role, why do you want to work here? And instead of me to say why I want to work there, I didn't even have a reason for why I wanted to work there. So what happened, I accidentally repeated the same question. So what happened, the interviewer, they were asking me, why do I want to work at this job? And then I said, why do I want to work at this job as well? And I repeated it. Because you have to realize that in order to have the best interviews, sometimes you have to have the worst ones. And what happened, I was in the car with my family. They pretty much heard the whole conversation. And there wasn't more to that interaction, because they could see that I was not prepared. They could see that I was talking really fast, but then also I didn't really take the time to actually think what I was going to say. I just said the first thing that came to my mind. And that's another thing when it comes to interviews. Do not say the first thing that comes to your mind. Actually take some time to really think about what you're going to say. When you talk slowly, you have to realize sometimes less is more. So the less things that you say and the more straight to the point you are, you realize they're going to take you more seriously. And of course, I did not get the job, because what happened, I was not prepared, I was talking fast, and I literally said the first thing on my mind. And because of how nervous I was sweating as well. And it's one of those things where, because you're in a car, you can't really open the windows because you're on a motorway. So what happened, I just pretty much had to enjoy my birthday, because it was on my birthday, I believe. And I went to a restaurant in a shopping mall. And it was a burger restaurant, because I do like burgers, but because I'm on this diet now, I haven't really had burgers as much because I'm trying to look good for the summer, and sometimes you have to give up your favorite food so that you can look good for the summer. What I learned about my worst interview is to be in an environment where I can actually take the time to gather my thoughts, that I'm not in a noisy environment or overcrowded environment, but then also to take the time with my thoughts and to take the time to really answer questions so that they take me more seriously. You need to prepare answers for the questions they may ask you, but then also have questions that you ask them at the end so that you look like you're enthusiastic and you want the job. You have to realize sometimes when you have the best job interview, you have to realize that you don't always get the job because that job, it may not be for you. There's more people applying for a job than there is jobs. So there's less jobs, but there's more people applying. So that's why you have to really perform the best when it comes to your interviews, because you wouldn't want it to be that someone else that you know has the job, but then you don't. And you don't want it to be that everyone else around you has a job, but you don't. So that should be motivation enough. And I'm just going to get into my best story, because when it came to my best story, I was on time for the interview, I was early for the interview, I was dressed smartly, and they asked me to interact with people. It was a job interview that I had before the job that I do have now. So when it came to the best interview that I had, I didn't even get the job because I think what they were looking for was someone that at least has more experience, but they just don't tell you that. What happens, they advertise the job in a way that everyone can apply for it, even if you don't have experience. When they have interviews with people and they ask a question, do you have experience? And you say no, but I have experience in this. You realize they say, okay, that sounds good, but then they hire someone else that has more experience. And I'm saying this because you may work hard to prepare for an interview, which I did, and best believe that was the best interview that I did have, because the weather was good, I was groomed, my lips wasn't dry, but then also my hair was good, my outfit was good, I was on time. And you know, the people before me, there was 3 other people that interviewed before me, and they had no questions. And I had like 4 or 5 questions I wanted to ask the interviewer. So what happened, I had to call the company to see if I got the job because they didn't tell me sooner. And sometimes when you call a company, they're more likely to respond faster. And then what happened as well, so another thing that I didn't mention about my best interview, so they had to reschedule because there wasn't enough staff to actually interview people. And then what happened, I went the first time and I went the second time, and I was prepared for the interview. I answered all the questions successfully. I wasn't talking too fast. I actually had time to really think about what I was going to say. And what happened, because the weather was good, it made me have more energy. I had good energy. And I left the interview thinking I was going to get the job, only to not get the job. And the thing is, there's nothing else I could have done because I based my answers on the job description. I looked at their products and services. And that's another thing when it comes to interviews, because the job description, you know, for example, when you have a checklist for dating, you want this guy to be 6 foot, you want the guy to make money, you want the guy to be good looking. But if the guy isn't any of those things, you realize that you're not going to choose the guy. And that's kind of what it's like in jobs as well, because they say they want someone that's smart, they want someone that's organized, they want someone that has attention to detail, and someone that has good communication skills. And if you don't tick those boxes, they're not going to choose you. And if you don't have that in your CV, in your cover letter, you realize that they're not going to choose you either. The keywords that are mentioned in the job description, those are the list of things that they are looking for. So that's why during the interview, you have to say, I like this product, I love this product because I use it often, and relate it to yourself. Don't make stuff up. Don't make any stories up, because if they ask you more questions and you don't know the answer, you realize that it's better to not build a relationship or to get into a job just based on lies. You might as well be truthful, and that's really the thing. Like, if you don't use their products, just say, I want to learn more about those products. And I wanted to say, so when it came to really that job interview, I prepared my answers to the job description, I was confident, the weather was good, and I left that interview thinking I was going to get it, only to not get it. I had a few more interviews in different areas. So the interviews, they were like local, some of them were further away, some of them were even online. They want you to answer these questions on like this chat GPT thing. And then what happens? You go on the link, you write paragraphs of why you want the job, and sometimes they don't even get back to you. And when they do get back to you, it's like a generic email saying that you didn't really like meet the requirements of the job. All you can do is really move forward, because some jobs, they want you to have like an online assessment, and sometimes you just need to be like taking the time to actually do those online assessments, because you may think you know the answers, but then when you rush and submit it, you realize that you did something wrong and you can no longer go back and do it. And when you're overconfident and when you're arrogant, thinking that you got the job before you've actually done it, you start to forget about your blind spots, which is your areas of improvement, because no one's really perfect. We all got areas that we need to work on. The last thing that I'm going to say, when it came to my worst interview and my best interview, I didn't even get the job. And some jobs you have to realize are not meant for you. But when you take the lessons from your worst interview and your best interview, you realize that you can take those lessons and actually apply it, and to not give up, to be consistent with like the job applications, so that you can see what works and what doesn't, and what you can do to improve. And I am in a job now because of all those lessons that I did learn. And if you took something away from this video, I want you to at least like the video, subscribe if you want to see my face again, and to also comment down below your job experience, because I can't be the only one. And until another video, I'll see you again soon.